Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to get started with today's Appraisal Buzz webinar, Remaining Relevant in Hyperspace Market. We have the DataMaster guys here, Marty, Kevin, and Jared. Jared, I'll hand it over to you to take it away.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much. We wanted to start with just a couple of introductions. My name is Jared Preisler. I'm the Chief Appraiser at DataMaster. And I also have my own fee appraisal business as well. I'm out kind of on the front line, like most of you, appraising properties every day. I've been with DataMaster since 2016. I'm also a AQB certified USPAP instructor, and I teach quite a few appraisal related courses, residential appraisal related courses. And I am joined today with Keven Ewell. Keven, if you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah, I'm also an AQB certified USPAP instructor. I just work with DataMaster part-time, and I'm also a full-time real estate appraiser. I sit on Utah's Appraisal Licensing and Certification Board. I've been there 4 years. My first term's almost up. I've been teaching appraisal courses since 2001. I've worked for several lenders as both an appraisal manager, as a review manager, and then I took a stint with the county as the chief deputy assessor for Utah County, helping set assessment roles for a few years. And then I'm just out running my own appraisal business for the last 3 years. So it's been fun.
Thank you, Kevin. We wanted to start off kind of talking about some of the basics. I'd like to give a little teaser. Towards the end, we're planning on about 40 minutes, 35, 40, 45 minutes, somewhere in there, depending on questions and stuff. But towards the end, we're actually going to share a tool, a spreadsheet that you can have for free on how to calculate market adjustments, or some of you might think of them as time adjustments. And so I encourage you to just kind of hold on till the very end, and we're going to share this tool that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So as a way of introduction of the topic, I had the opportunity a couple of months ago to share at an appraisal conference in Gulfport, Mississippi. And my topic was technology and how technology is impacting the appraisal profession. And as I began or started that presentation, I asked the group, there were about 100 appraisers there, what changes had come to their markets since the pandemic. And immediately, different hands started shooting up. And one of the gentlemen that I called on, he said that in his market, swimming pools had changed quite a bit. The value of a swimming pool in his market over the past 9 months, 12 months, they'd really seen a difference. And I said, that's pretty interesting. Tell me why you think that is and what you're talking about. And he said, well, swimming pools used to be worth maybe $10,000 at the most in most of the markets that he worked. And that value had nearly doubled. And the reason was people didn't want to go to the community swimming pools, or the community swimming pools were closed, the school pools. And so having a pool at your home, being able to enjoy that pool, control who came and went, and kind of have some control over that became a benefit that he had never seen in his market before. And that gets us kind of to the basics of what we're going to be talking about today, is how we recognize and some of the basic skills that we use to as appraisers when we have these kind of crazy hyper markets where things are just going nuts. I remember, I've shared this story a couple of times. I started appraising 25 plus years ago. And my trainer, we didn't call them trainers back then. We had more colorful names for those that helped us get in the business. I would go with him, and we'd go to the property, and he would have me go in the backyard and count the number of fruit trees. And some of you might be going, what do you mean number of fruit trees? Yeah, I'd have to count if they were apple trees or pear trees or peach trees. We have here peach trees and apricot trees, and then the number of them, and I'd estimate kind of the production of those trees. Because back in the day, if a property had some producing fruit trees, that was a benefit or a value that the market found. Nowadays, it's been a long time since I've counted a fruit tree at a property that I've been to, because we don't spend the time to preserve fruit. We just order it on Amazon or go down to the grocery store and pick up what we need. The benefit of those fruit trees has been lost on the market. And so as times have changed, the things that the market views as important change also. Keven, I know you started appraising in, where was it? Washington, right?
Yeah, I started up in Seattle. So, it's amazing to me how different the markets are as you move across the country, and what different factors are more or less relevant. I remember starting off appraising some waterfront homes in Washington, and you really had to pay attention to the position of the home in accordance to the water. Was it a low bank, mid bank, or a high bank? Did it have water access? Could you, how close was the house to the water? And these are all different factors you had to look at to determine what the market is and how it was reacting to it. Because you could have two homes with identical waterfront footage, but their relationship to the water caused a difference in valuation, whether it be a high bank or a low bank or something along those lines. So yeah, I think as we look at different properties in different areas of the country, we see different things that affect the market and affect what the valuation of those properties can be.
Well, Keven, and can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize, everybody. I've been having some technical difficulties, and I might ask a couple of times if you can still hear me. The thing that I'm noticing today in today's market is some of the items that maybe might have had some relevance, they don't have as much relevance. When we have such a shortage of inventory, people will pay more for a property, even if it doesn't have some of the amenities, the condition that maybe we would expect in a market that's more imbalanced. And the only way we can really find that out is by asking the right questions. So that's a basic skill set that as an appraiser we develop along the way, is these investigative skills of asking the right questions. Keven, what are some...
The biggest question that's going to arise from that is, what's the right question?
Yeah.
And I'll give you my favorite appraisal answer. It depends. So, we can answer every appraisal question with that answer. It depends. But in reality, you have to look at what the questions are that you need to ask. So when you get through an appraisal, you're telling a story. And as you get to the bottom of it, it should tell a story. And if something's out of line, then something's wrong. The story's not being told, or the adjustments aren't making sense, or something. So you have to ask the what's different about this property? Why is it acting differently in the market? And once you start asking the what's and the whys about the property, you can hopefully start making sense as to why that comp or that property is a little bit different than the other sales in the area, and things that we might be missing to help come up with that as a comparable. There's also other market factors. Jared, do you want to talk about those?
Yeah. So before we do that, Marty put up here for us, I think on your screen, you're seeing the valuation process there. What Keven and I are talking about here is in step number 1. in step number one of the valuation process, there's 7 different things. Of course, identifying the client, all of those. But today, what we're really talking about is identifying the relevant characteristics of those properties, and that's where this question, the right questions come in, and making sure that we have the skill set to be able to differentiate. Sometimes this can be done by simply asking the question, if I did the cost approach on my subject property and on the comparable, would I use the same quality rating? Would I use the same depreciation scale? Do they have a similar effective age? Do they have similar, would I be in the same ballpark? One of the things I love to do with my trainees is have them do the cost approach, because it helps them when they start selecting comparables in the future to really identify, is that property competing or comparable? And so that's, if you're struggling with trying to find and kind of decipher what the market's doing, that would be one of the things kind of to go back to. The other thing I think that's important.
Jared, can I make a comment?
Yeah, please.
So last month at the board, we had a hearing on the appraisal board, and one of the appraisals that we were reviewing was an appraisal that I will call a pick'em. So it's an appraisal that didn't really tell a story. The unadjusted sales price came in at about what the adjusted sale price was. So nothing made any sense on any of the comps. And there was no analysis done on the report. So, when you fail to tell the story, when you fail to figure out what's going on and what the differences are, maybe you've just got a comp that's not a comp. Maybe you've got data that's just, there's something wrong. And the appraiser failed to recognize that something was wrong. She's like, they were like, that it doesn't really make sense. And I said, but why? And they're like, I don't know. I have to figure that out. So before you turn the report in and before it makes it to the state, make sure you know why it is doing what it's doing.
I think, Kevin, also, some of us will say, well, there's not enough homes on the market right now. We're dealing with a serious shortage of inventory. Asking the real estate agents, if you couldn't sell this home, where would you take your buyers to? Where's their next option? And sometimes we forget about that. If the subject property is not available, where am I going to go for my next option? I've got to have housing. Is that in a little bit smaller home that is within my price range? Is it a little bit closer to work? Is it a little bit, what are the key features or factors about that property that make it appealing to the current market? And if we don't have properties that are available, where's the substitute comparable for that analysis, for my market analysis? And you've got to think through it and ask those questions. Sometimes we don't go back to the real estate agents, but they're the ones that are marketing these homes that we need to try to understand.
Well, one of the favorite questions that I love to ask when I get the seller of a home that's moving out of their home, I ask them where they're moving to, and then I ask them why they picked that area. And it gives me an opportunity to figure out why market participants are doing what they're doing. Now, it's only one data set, and I understand that. But as you get to ask that question over and over again, you start to understand why people are attracted to different areas that are in your marketplace.
So one of the things we were going to talk about the transaction itself and some of the basic things that we need to understand about the transaction. Most of the work that we're doing today, the definition of market value is in our certifications, it's in our reports, and it has 5 components. And one of the things that is helpful for me is to kind of tie my entire appraisal back in my reconciliation to that definition of market value. And so it's key when we look at that definition. It says the most probable price a property should bring in a competitive and open market. Now, there's some definitions that say would bring instead of should, and there's a slight little, maybe a nuance there or something, but the difference between should and would. But there's 5 things that have to be met in that for it to be market value. And so I go back to each of those 5 things. Are the current, number one is the current buyers and sellers, are they typically motivated? If you don't know what the motivation is, you're not asking the questions, then you really can't say whether or not that purchase price represents typical motivation. Are both parties well informed or well advised and acting in what he or she considers their best interest? I had a situation not too long ago where the subject property that I was appraising was part of a transaction, a purchase transaction, and the listing agent had priced this home well above where there was any support in the market. And so I asked them, how did you do your pricing? And they said, well, the sellers wanted to get this much money out of it. They had heard the market was going really crazy, and so they had wanted me to just put a certain price on it. I said, did you do a CMA? Oh yeah, we did a CMA, but it was suggesting maybe $75,000 less than what we listed it for. And so all of a sudden, I have this scenario where the sellers and the buyers are not well informed. This listing didn't really represent any activity in the market, current or historic. And then they got an offer way above that. And when I asked the buyer's agent why they advised them to make that offer, they said, we've made 28 offers and we've been burned, and we want to make a really high, ridiculous offer to get under contract. And we know you as the appraiser, you're going to come in at what the real market value is, and we'll just renegotiate to that price. So in that case, none of the actions of the market participants really represented market value. I didn't really think it was my job to help them negotiate. That's not in my scope of work. Neither one of them were my client. It was my lender. But tying it back to that definition, and of course, there's 3 other components which we won't go into today. But get real familiar with your assignment and the definition of market value. Ask those questions about the transaction. One of the things that I love to do with the real estate agents is, a lot of times they want to leave you a packet of comparables of sales that they use. I'm more interested in how many showings they had, how many offers they had, the details of those offers, and some of the terms and conditions, not just they offered us $380,000 or $500,000, but what the conditions were around those. And then I want to know why they chose the offer that they chose. Those are the key questions that I like to ask about the transaction. And that helps me analyze, is the transaction, is it a market transaction? You can learn a lot from that. Keven, what are some other questions you might ask about the transaction?
I like to know the number of offers, the range of offers. Sometimes the realtors will actually hand me all the offers they got received on a house. Not sure if that's correct or not, but I've gotten it. But I like to understand, where they're coming from. I like to know, we've got a few realtors in our market that like to price everything based on a price per square foot, or I did an income property last week and they were doing it on a cap rate. Never mind the sales comparison approach or the comps that have sold or the homes that have sold around it, but using just a little piece of data to come up with it, the information. So I really like to know how they came up with a value and how they determined what they should list it or what they should buy it for, from either the sales or the listing agent. And if I know that information, then I can kind of help understand at least what their process was when they were thinking through it and making an offer on it. As appraisers, our job is not to determine the market, it's to read the market. And if we can't read what's going on and react to it, we still have to provide support. I think there's a great difference between support and proof of our adjustments and our value. We need to provide support for our value. And once it's supported, then we can say this is where we came from, and we can tell the rest of the story. I like referring to appraisals as stories a lot because we are constantly telling the story. And that story is, what is the value of this property? How does it fit within relationship to the other homes in the market, both that are currently for sale and those that are in an area where homes haven't sold because maybe it's a really nice area and people just don't sell their homes there. So you're seeing a higher value for that property, but historically it proves it out. So sometimes you have to look at things from different points of view to figure it out. And just getting as much information you can from the parties involved helps you get those different points of view. So you can constantly question yourself, what am I not seeing? What should I be seeing? Or do I just have one crazy in the market?
Yeah, I like that quote, Kevin, that we hear sometimes. One crazy buyer doesn't make a market, but
five make a trend.
Yeah, that's the punchline to that. So, Kevin, is there anything that we wanted to talk about relevant to USPAP, or have we kind of covered the things in standard 1-2?
I think we covered standard 1-2, which is the valuation process. Goes over the steps that you need to do, which is really the basic building block of what an appraisal is. So we're going to define the problem. We're going to make sure that we understand. I like what it says in the preamble. It says, be aware and understand. Sorry, I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. Be aware of and understand and correctly employ those recognized methods and techniques that are necessary to produce an credible appraisal. So I think that, we have to recognize what methods we might need to use. We need to recognize what tools. We need to understand them. And then we need to correctly employ them. So as we're trying to make adjustments, one of my favorite quotes from one of my mentors is Rick Langdon. And he used to always say, an appraiser's job is to find comps and not make adjustments. So when we're looking for comparables, we have to really look to find what makes a comp a comp. What makes this property comparable to the subject? Am I similar in location? Am I a current sell? Am I similar in similar to the subject? So do I have similar quality of construction, similar age, similar style? And it might not be Rambler to Rambler, but maybe Ramblers in my market compete with Ramblers and tri-levels or 2-stories. Knowing your individual market will let you know how each individual style or each individual home competes with one another. And then you can use those as comps. So, my favorite reviewer was over improvements, because typically what happens with an over improvement is you get the appraiser that says, I'm going to go find a similar home. So they go 3 miles away to find a similar home, but the only challenge is it's in a completely different neighborhood. So it's different in location because homes in that neighborhood are all similar to that home, whereas homes in the subject's neighborhood are all much smaller or inferior in quality or older. So you have to find similar neighborhoods to be pulling the comparables from so that you're a similar location.
I think that there's an example that's given in one of the courses that I teach about you're appraising a log home, and this log home happens to be in the suburbs, and it's just because somebody liked the style of a log home. And one of the comparables used is a log home that's about 20 miles away, sits on 40 acres, has a creek running in the back of it or a stream, and yet they look very similar. The property, the improvements themselves look very similar, but the comp that's 20 miles away with the stream is, even though it is a log home, it's not, that sale is not comparable to my my log home that was built in the suburb on a quarter-acre lot. And I think those are extreme examples, but we have to make sure that we're exchanging like product for like product. So one of the ways that we can see if we have kind of the wrong comp or we have the wrong property is through the paired sales analysis. What's your experience, Kevin, with paired sales? I know sometimes I talk to appraisers I'll be teaching, and they'll go, that works out really good in the course material, but it never works good in real life. I've never done a paired sale analysis.
Yeah, I've taught courses where, I was teaching a course and I mentioned something about paired sales, and an appraiser stood up and said, yep, never works. You can't get enough data, or there's not enough data, and you just can't do that in the real world. Well, really, paired sales is based on the principle of substitution. And if you're telling me the principle of substitution doesn't work in the market, then how do we as appraisers react and do things? So I'm a big believer in paired sales analysis. No, you're not going to find two identical homes. I did actually find one true paired sale down in San Antonio, Texas. But it's rare to find two very identical homes. But really, the premise behind paired sales analysis is to look at significant differences and make adjustments for them. If you read through USPAP, that's what it says, is to look at significant differences.
And I think you can't do it just based on one pair. So the work comes in where maybe I'm going to do 4 or 5 pairs, or one of my comparables I'm going to pair to maybe comparable 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and you're doing multiple to help with some of those differences that we just can't isolate out or segment out. And then you look at this, now you've got this range, whether you convert it to a percentage or you keep it as a dollar amount is up to you. But now I have this percentage, the adjustment for location might be somewhere between 3.75% to 5.25%. And now I'm going to reconcile that paired sales analysis with multiple pairs to 4.5%, 4%, 5%. That's my job as the appraiser to see what the market reaction is. But doing just a single paired analysis with 2 comps is not really paired analysis. And that's what I think sometimes the students will tell me, the other appraisers will say, it doesn't work with just one pair. And I'm like, you're right.
They're absolutely right. It goes back to the quote we said earlier, one crazy person in the market doesn't make a market. So one paired sales analysis doesn't make an adjustment. One of the complaints that many lenders have is that appraisers don't support their adjustments, or they simply state, I used paired sales analysis, where when you look through the appraisal and you actually look at the adjustments, they're inconsistent. And so you can tell that they're not applying a true paired sell or looking at the analysis, because it's just not consistent with each other, or they don't know how to properly apply the adjustments that they found. They're applying them individually to each individual property, which means they're doing a single match pair to find out what the adjustments between that comp and something else is. You really have to do multiple cells to be able to determine what's right, what's wrong. just like with any other method, say I'm using the cost approach and I'm using cost differences to derive an adjustment. It's a valid approach. But again, the question comes, is the answer correct? Or is the answer supported? And only looking at it from a few different ways can you see if the answer is supported and if it makes sense.
Yeah, so I think, Keven, that one of the ways that we can see if it makes sense is in a simple sensitivity analysis. And I like to do this on all my reports. And this is one of those basic things that I was taught and that I think really helps us in a market like today. So I'll describe it really simply, and then I'm going to take the screen over and we're going to kind of get to how to measure or analyze for a market adjustment in a real life scenario. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to look at my pre-adjusted range of value. So let's say I'm using four comparables. I've narrowed it down to 4 sales. Those are my comparables 1 through 4. I've got a couple of active or under contract listings in my report, which is pretty typical of a report that I do. And I look at the sale prices before I started adjusting, so pre-adjusted sale prices. And let's say my range is $100,000. I've got a low of $250,000 and a high of $350,000. And you may say, well, gosh, that's a really wide range. But maybe I've got properties with basement finish, without basement finish. One of them has a shop or something like that. They're all close in proximity, and I have this range of value. And once I make all of my adjustments and I get down to the very end, instead of $100,000 difference, my difference is $25,000. And I still am not a single point where they all match. But what that tells me, because my range got tighter and tighter and tighter as I made my adjustments, and there's a reason that the grid is kind of laid out the way that it is. I start adjusting from the top of the grid to the bottom of the grid. So market adjustment, time adjustment is going to be first. Site, view, location, all of those in order of the grid. And when I get down to the bottom, if all of my adjustments that I've measured out, applied with other or determined through other analysis and then applied to my comparables, if we get tighter and tighter, then that tells me that those adjustments do in fact represent or reflect the market today. And that's one of the ways to validate your market. A good case in point would be, let's say that I make a $5 per square foot site adjustment, and at the bottom, instead of my adjustments being less than 100,000 range, it's $150,000 range. Then I know that either I have a bad comparable, a sale that's not comparable, or my $5 adjustment's not correct. So doing that analysis of the pre and post adjusted value range can help you understand if your adjustments are correct, if they correctly reflect the market, which is really what makes an adjustment correct, is if it reflects the market.
Yeah, it's interesting is you do a lot of appraisal review work. The good appraisals converge to a value, and you can tell if they're over adjusting because the values will actually cross.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just widen. So when I teach trainees, I'm like, you want it to go in a nice V shape. You don't want it to go into an X. X is bad, and you don't want it wide open because Y just leaves way too many questions to be answered.
Sure.
So
with that, let me take over the screen here. Hopefully we don't have problems doing this. And we're going to talk through just some basic skills on how to determine what your market Kevin,
while you're doing that and getting that loaded, let's talk a little bit about market adjustments. And I'm just going to go into a little bit of theory here, not a lot, but there's different ways to make time adjustments or market adjustments. You can do a paired cells analysis of a sell resell. You can also do an analysis of a sell and a sell of a resell of a competing property, so different time frames. The biggest challenge is you need to make sure that the properties are comparing are both in a similar market time frame, so seasonally, as well as conditions. So if it's sold in fall, you really want a comp that sold in fall, and that the conditions remained about the same. You can also do group data analysis. I like to look at median price per similar property. The biggest difference, or the biggest similarity between all of these, is you need to be comparing to similar properties. So particularly when you're using group data, whether you're using an average or a median price of competing properties, the properties really need to be similar. And you can also do an average or median price per square foot and analyze the change in price per square foot to come up with a market adjustment. I like to do both. I love group data, so I do a lot of data analysis. I use a lot of Excel to help me with that. There are a lot of tools out there that help appraisers do that. So as you're doing this, then you can determine what works for your market, because you're looking at a couple different scenarios. I'm being told that there's an echo. Does everybody have an echo, or are we okay?
I can hear you with no echo.
Okay.
I think it's just me, Kevin.
Okay.
So Kevin, that was great lead into this. I'm going to use my MLS because I'm most familiar with it, but what I'm showing you is available in nearly all of the MLS systems that I've had the chance to work with, whether it's a Matrix, a Rapatoni, a Flex, whatever Paragon, whatever type, you're going to have something similar to this. And so, like Kevin was saying, we need to do our market or time adjustment within like properties. So it's good information. I guess it's okay to kind of look at the 30,000 foot level and say properties in zip code 84215 have increased over the past year at 3% a month or 8% overall. But that really doesn't tell us what our specific property type is doing or our specific market is doing. There's a lot of tools, Case-Shiller, the FHFA, home price index calculator, some of those kind of tools that can be valuable, but really we want to narrow it down to our property type. So I've started out here by just drawing the neighborhood in the map. I hope most of you have an idea of how you can do this. Most of them have a little polygon tool that you can pick, and you can denote or delineate your neighborhood. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to segment my market. So I want homes that are built between 1930 and 1969 that have lot sizes between 0.10 and 0.45. These are homes that have 700 square foot to 1,100 square foot on the main floor. You might not get this detail, but you can certainly set a square footage parameter, whatever you would be doing for picking your own comparables.
Yeah, this is really important. Jared's going through a process that he does. Follow your process. You don't have to change it. What do you use to select comparables? This is what you're going to use to select your comparables for your time adjustment. Because if they're competing properties and you would consider them for your market analysis or your comparables, then those are the properties you want to use in your analysis as well.
Yep. So I have 80 matches, which is quite a few. We've had an active market. I want to view those matches. And most of you, when you view, will get a farm list or just a spreadsheet looking list. I'm going to select all of these, and then most of the MLSs have a history report. In my MLS, it calls it a property activity report. So it'll take just a second to generate this because I have 80 of them. We'll give it just a second here. So now, now that it generated them, it groups by property type or by property itself, not by property type, but by property. So this first sale is 560 East 4th Street. It has the current sale, a previous sale, previous listing, previous listing. And I can simply scroll down, and what I'm looking for is two sales that have occurred very close to each other. So this one was in 2021. This one was in 2011. That's not very close, so I'm not going to use that one. So once I scroll down and I pick the ones I want, I'm going to flip over and show you how we display these. So this is the tool that we're going to make available to you. So here's 5 properties that I selected from that list. It literally took me 3 minutes to find these 5 sales. It doesn't take a long time if you can use that history. You don't have to click into every sale, but you can display the property activity report or the history report and find your properties that have had recent resales. So the way that this works, each of the columns is a property. The first, at first we show when the property recently went under contract. So you can do it the way that you want. I go from contract date because that's the meeting of the minds. That's when everybody agreed that that was the sale price of that property. Some appraisers like to go from sale date, and there's an argument to be made for that because that's when the rest of the market found out what the actual sale price was and made decisions on listing other properties. So whether you do it, whichever way you do it is fine. In this tool, you enter the date, whether you want it the contract date or the sold date. So the first one is the most recent sold date, contract date. The next one is the next most recent contract date. Then the tool automatically calculate the difference in days, years, and months between those two time periods. So in this green section here, you'll enter in the most recent sale. And then if there are concessions, you'd minus those out. Conditions of the sale, you'd minus those out. And we come up with a adjusted sale price. We're not adjusting for feature differences because this is the same property. So then in the blue section, it's that second most recent sale, the most recent prior sale. So in our case here with property number 1, it just recently sold for $355, and prior, about a year ago, it sold for $215. So we get the difference, $140,000. Then I look at that property and I say, was there any improvement changes, or does the price change represent only the market difference, meaning nothing changed to the property? So you do have to account for that. So let's say in this particular case, they did a pretty significant remodel. They did paint and carpet, a new kitchen, new appliances, and 2 new bathrooms. And so that was about a $50,000 difference, or a change in the property from an improvement standpoint. You may have that they finished the basement, that they did an addition, or they added a detached structure, something like that. You have to account for that. Those would be minuses. And then the tool will calculate what the net difference is. So your responsibility with this tool is to come up with the net differences and any changes with the financing and conditions. And then the tool will calculate what the net difference is, and based on the time that's elapsed between the two sales, will give you a percentage of total change, annual change, and monthly change. We've set this up to be able to analyze 5 properties at the same time. And along the bottom, you have a summary of what the median monthly change is, the median, and then the average monthly change, the median annual, and the total, the median total change. Keven, what do you like about this? What are some things that maybe I missed? And then we'll wrap it up here.
So the biggest thing I like about this is now I have the data. I'm looking right at it, and I can start analyzing the data at this point. I can start seeing that, okay, comp 1 sold in May, so it's a very similar market time frame, and it's about a year apart. Comp 2 sold in May and January, so I'm talking winter to spring. In our market, in the Utah market, there's typically a dip in the winter because nobody wants to move in the snow. I don't get it. But you can see that historically there's always a slight dip. So that one might, you can start seeing that might have a little bit of difference. Comp 3 sold in 2018 and 2021. So there's I can't do math this morning. There's 3 years difference there, but they both sold April and March. So it's both spring. So that one's okay, but it's 3 months. So I'm taking that average monthly change, and you can see the change is really low. So maybe I'm not capturing what I need to. Same thing with number 4. So as I go through this, I'm able to analyze each of the comps and able to say, you know what, comp 1 and comp 5 are the most relative to what I'm looking at. So my time adjustment should be somewhere between 2.8 and 3.7, which if you look at your median monthly is 2.8 and average is 2.7. So it's at the lower end, but I can see why it's at the lower end. And maybe in a really hot market, I might say I'm going to go at 3.5% per month. And I can do that, and I can now explain and I can reconcile, because I've got data here, so I can reconcile it and say, here's where I'm at, and here's why I'm here. And then everybody knows where, why, and how, and you've told the whole story.
Yeah, so this is a very simple way to do an analysis of resale, which really is very property specific, market specific. And this is a great thing to keep in your work file. Really doesn't take more than just a few minutes to do. I think this is probably a 10-minute, maybe 15-minute most, for me in an analysis to come up with a supportable value, and then I test that in my grid. So that's kind of what we want to show. Marty, you're on the call with us. I'm not sure how to get this to folks, so maybe you can take that part over and how we're going to share it with them.
Yeah, so I'm putting the link for it right now in the Q&A. So use that link, datamasterusa.com/market-time-adjustment. And you can go there and download the calculator here, the Excel calculator that Jared just showed. The other thing that I wanted to do is let everybody know we've got a special 50%, or sorry, no, not 50%, $50 off coupon code for Valuation Expo coming up. So register for Valuation Expo in Las Vegas in September. Use the code VALEXPODM to get $50 off, and I believe that applies to any packs when you register. So VALEXPODM.
So Marty, thank you very much. I don't know, I wasn't really watching questions. Were there any questions that were brought up? Anything We're coming up on the top of the hour, which is perfect timing. We appreciate everybody hanging with us to the very end. But if we're happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I don't see any lingering questions out there.
Very good. You guys have a great weekend. If you're fortunate enough to be like me, I'm headed to a family reunion, and those can always be either really, really fun or just a really long road trip. So enjoy your weekend and recharge and get out there and make some value.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzz webinar. It was a really great one. Thank you so much for DataMaster for putting it on. We appreciate everybody for coming to join us. And have a great day, everyone.
Bye.